I used to hate writing, but now with my little friend, man, I love writing.
Mhm.
It's the greatest.
My little friend.
I was reading the news yesterday morning, and I was like starting to ask it uh, questions to clarify some news articles, and before I knew it, ChatGPT and I had written a whole op-ed.
Yeah.
So I sent it to Suzanne to read it before I send it to the Seattle Times to make sure I don't get in trouble. And I got to go back and fact check because, ChatGPT. Um,
No
my,
one cares
Just
about.
toss in the deep research.
Yeah, no one cares about that anymore.
no one,
And it'll cite your sources for you.
no longer any such thing as conflict of interest anymore either, right? We've
No, as long as you're citing sources, you can do whatever.
Say whatever you want.
say whatever you want. All right. What we're going to do here on this podcast.
It's not plagiarizing when you put it in quotes and reference.
It's for creative content, right? We'll call this a comedy show. This is
Then all bets are off.
Daily Show is what this is.
It's
Right.
always sunny. Sorry.
It was sunny here yesterday. It was 74 degrees here in
It's always sunny in Philadelphia. That's what they do basically.
Oh,
Higher, but then they call themselves a comedy, and they're just, anyways. I love that show. So.
well, we are a comedy.
It would be the first FileMaker comedy show. We would be trendsetters, that's for sure.
Would it be funny? I guess.
Would it be?
Well,
We might laugh.
we would laugh a lot.
We should
Yeah.
tell Brandon to leave this part in. So the pregame show.
Yeah. I will say I had 3 people come up to me and say, "Aren't you that guy from that podcast?" So
Yeah.
there are people watching it at Engage.
It's worth it. I've had the same thing for my other podcast where I was up in Alaska last year for a drill in Anchorage, and Coast Guard Chief Petty Officer came up and said, "I watch your podcast all the time."
That's great.
That I have street cred in the room, right?
That's a lot of validation right there.
Yeah.
It's super great. I got to start.
That's my new entry line. It's like, have you been working out? I'm going to be like, dude, I saw your podcast. I know even if they don't have a podcast, going to be really?
Well, given the state of current podcasting, you'll be 75% correct every time.
Yeah.
A statistic that I used to poo-poo a little bit, but that I've come around to thinking is kind of impressive. Every year they talk about how many profitable quarters FileMaker's had as a company, and they're at 104 now. 104 consecutive profitable quarters as a technology company, especially when you consider some of the companies out there that are venture capital funded that have never had a profitable quarter. I think that does speak to some staying power for them in the marketplace.
Well, it's time for the FileMaker DevCast, an exciting episode following the Engage conference in Austin, Texas. I'm your citizen developer and host, Dan Smiley, and we're joined by the whole cast of characters from Portage Bay Solutions. Hi, John. You got your team there, still in the hotel room or the Airbnb in Austin?
Yeah, we're at our Airbnb. We're in a really nice residential neighborhood full of trees. I walked back and forth to the conference yesterday about a mile. So we're nice and close.
Texas has trees. There are trees in Texas.
There are some. Austin's pretty nice. I was before the conference. I was down in the Big Bend area for a few days, checking out Big Bend National Park, and there's no trees down. Well, very few trees down there.
Gotcha. Mike, how are you doing there? How was it engaged for you?
Well, I'm not at Engage. I'm sitting this one out. So, but I'm doing well. Thank you.
Welcome. Oh, we've got well, John, why don't you have the rest of the crowd there with you introduce themselves?
Oh, Joe. As usual, I brought a bike, so I've been riding around town and exploring different areas that I haven't been to before. So it's been nice. I did go to Engage, just to clear that up.
Is the ride in Austin, is it rider friendly?
For the type of riding I like to do, yeah. I mean, I like weird side paths and dirt, trails, and odd places. So I kind of get all over the place and don't really worry about traffic that much.
Gotcha. Xandon?
Yep. Hey, everybody. Xandon over here. Yeah, I was actually presenting this year at Engage. Had a really cool session on leveraging your local LLM for FileMaker. And yeah, it went really well. But I spent a ridiculous amount of time prepping and stressing and having anxiety about it because it's my first time presenting. So I think it went really well. But it was exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. I only made it to one because I was focused so much on getting the presentation together. I only made it to one session. And it was a great session, but I feel like I kind of missed out on all the wonderful sessions that everybody else made.
I missed a lot of sessions too, but I think Xandon's underselling. His presentation went really well. The room was standing room only.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good session. I'm looking forward to watching. Fortunately, the sessions are recorded, so we'll probably take kind of prioritize the sessions and watch the videos and then talk about them in our weekly dev meetings.
Oh, that's cool. I look forward to hearing about it, the large language model thing. And we've got some new folks with us that I haven't met, and we'll start with Jillian. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm fairly new here at Portage Bay.
Where did you come from? What were you doing before Portage Bay?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. Been in the marketing and design area, but FileMaker was kind of always a part of my skill set. I just really wasn't doing it professionally. And most recently, I had launched a physical magazine in my local community for the B2B businesses. It was really great. And I'm formerly a professional photographer. So I had a photography studio in business several years ago. So
That's awesome. So you got into FileMaker development because you were using the product yourself?
It goes way, way back in the early days of the 1990s, I think. And I was working for a temporary agency. There was a temp agency that focused on people that knew how to use Macintoshes because that was like the big new computer platform. And I got a temporary position at the University of Pennsylvania in the publishing department. They had a contact database built in FileMaker, and that was my first exposure to it. And it wasn't really even part of what they asked me to do, but right away I was like making it better and integrating things. And I thought, well, I just love this. My job after that was with a advertising creative agency. And when they found out that I had FileMaker skills, they had a client that came to them that had a system built on FileMaker. So I became the person that had to learn how to use FileMaker to help them. They sent me for training. I got to go to my first FileMaker conference way back when. And then fast forward to maybe within the past 10 years, I worked for a company that had built a vertical market solution based on FileMaker. I ended up helping them to improve their system. So it's kind of like been on again, off again. And I really only made the decision this past August to refocus and retrain, completely kind of focus on that skill set. I was kind of really tired of doing the marketing and the creative stuff. And I was really kind of enamored with some of the more tech advances that were happening with FileMaker.
Well, that's a great story. And I kind of got there in a similar way. So that's awesome. I look forward to working with you on some projects.
Jillian's working on Easy IAP right now.
Are you? Okay. Well, there you go. Evan.
Yes, sir. So I came from the audio video industry where I was there for about 10 years as a video engineer. About 4 years ago now or so, I wanted to switch into the tech space and I went through some data science boot camps and classes and whatnot before I got a job at Ep22 Solutions, which is a vertical market for home theater business management software. It's all FileMaker based. So I got my foot in the door into the FileMaker industry over there and just fell in love with it, really. And here I guess it's been about a month and a half now or so. I found John and the rest is history, really. Got hired on as a FileMaker developer and server administrator for the company.
Well, that's great. We need to talk about servers offline later. So
Yes, sir.
so you guys are at who all went to Engage? Just the three of you there in the room? Okay. Well, let's start with what you guys thought overall. I mean, I was there last year. I couldn't make it this year. I thought that the Apple campus space was really a nice location to do this. How did the Apple space feel to you this year?
I thought it was, it's somewhat the same, obviously. The food is good. I guess one of my takeaways from this conference was kind of, some of the energy from the Claris team was a little more obvious than past years. I think for whatever reason, and I'm not privy to the inner workings at Claris really, but I think the new CEO, Ryan McCann, has kind of energized their staff a bit. And I was kind of excited to see that. I think there's going to be some interesting new kind of slants in their marketing. And I'm just kind of excited to see that excitement from them. That was one of my takeaways anyway.
Did they talk about any kind of a new direction or new focus for FileMaker? Is he bringing a new vision to the product?
Well, I think we're actually a little bit uncertain of our NDAs on some of what we saw at the conference. So we'll go a little bit light on exact details, but they're obviously continuing to integrate AI into the platform.
Big focus. There was actually, from my vantage point, there's a huge focus shift on AI. Of course, as it pertains to almost everything, but there was a huge focus with both the keynote speech as well as several other sessions, really focusing on integration and some really cool stuff that they're releasing in the next version about AI, and then even a longer term goal of doing some really the sort of the things you actually are expecting to have in FileMaker are planned for the future. Again, with skirting that NDA, we're not quite sure how much we can talk about, but it's looking really good for our horizon.
So when you talk about, and I understand the NDA part, but you got my juices flowing. So they're an Apple company, right? And Apple spent a lot of time talking about Apple Intelligence, although I think I just heard on MacBreak Weekly that they're not going to get it out into like fully into the iPhone until next year. There've been some delays with Apple Intelligence, but do you think there's any possibility they'll just build that right into this product since they're the same company, or are they really looking at allowing you to make API calls into these other models, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc.? Blank face. Can't talk about it.
Well, we can talk in generality. I think they're going to do, based on what we saw, I think they're going to do what you would expect them to do, which is to build support for AI technology deeper into the product. I think both for the front end user, the end user of FileMaker, and probably equally important for us as developers, what you can do with AI tools as software developers these days is pretty amazing. And it would be crazy for Claris and FileMaker not to provide those kinds of capabilities to FileMaker developers. It would put us all at a competitive disadvantage. So we're looking forward to seeing some integration of AI into development capabilities for sure.
Yeah, and they've already got a lot of AI integration already, but they're really polishing it up for the next release for features that you can have in there. So I'm excited. I was a little worried going into it about how fast FileMaker was going to transition, but it looks like they've got a good roadmap, and they're going to embrace AI and go forward with all the things you're kind of hoping for.
I think there were at least 8 AI sessions, including Xandon's, maybe 9 or 10, but a pretty high percentage of the sessions overall were AI focused. Certainly obvious that Claris is treating that pretty seriously.
Yeah.
It would be nice to be able to go into a developer tool AI window and query AI about scripts that that will then be, formatted correctly that you can just pull right into the script development window. Like, I use ChatGPT to help me with scripts and planning and other things in my FileMaker work all the time, but you can't cut and paste out of it, really, right? And it doesn't get it right all the time. I did one where I was like, yeah, by the way, ChatGPT, that's not actually a FileMaker function. It's like, oh, my bad. Here, try it like this. I'm like, okay, but
Yeah.
but talk a good game, and most of it's right, but that's absolutely wrong.
I went to a session on taking poorly structured data and using AI to get it into a structured format yesterday. And the speaker had an interesting observation about how the more specific you ask the AI to be, the more you're encouraging it to hallucinate, because it really wants to give you what you're asking for. And if you give it 10 data points and say you want all 10 filled, it's going to put something in each data point, regardless of how accurate it is. So you're almost better off being a little bit looser. Was what the speaker had found. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is interesting. Although it seems like how it's responding changes day to day.
Yeah.
Well, the models are changing constantly. So
yeah. So what was true, yesterday may or may not be true today, and I think it's useful to have two different models open at the same time, ask them both the same question, and see what you get out of that.
That was part of what Xandon was showing in his local LLM presentation, also.
Well, tell us about your presentation.
It was fun. Basically went in on how to install and showed some examples of integration with AI using the new Gemini or Gemma 3 from Google. Gemma 3, not Gemini, is the source one. And it was fun. It was fun. I was cramming the day before to put together the demo part, of being able to drop stuff in a container in FileMaker and then have FileMaker push that by a API call to use your local LLM that you'd be hosting. And hosting for this particular session, I did Omaha with Open Web UI as the front end, and it was super cool. I took a screen grab of some table data and dropped that in a container, and it output it to a JSON format, and then from there took it into HTML format, and from there I could open in a web viewer and see it in a table format in the web viewer, and I didn't really have to do anything other than the initial scripting to submit those data API calls. So that was really exciting for me. With the models coming out new and multimodal models, it's really, I think, changing day by day, definitely, and really looking cool. Oh yeah, I did the cheese. I did an image. I like cheese, right? So Met Market in Seattle, they have some really good cheeses, and they have a cheesemongers that are there. And I bought some cheese, and I took a picture of just the cheese package and the information on the front. And I asked it to tell me about the cheese and tell me what it pairs well with. And it gave me this wonderful output talking about the cheese, where it comes from, what it pairs with, all of the different elements. And those are some of the things, like just from an image of a product, you can get all of this detailed information. So if you're working in marketing, your job's like half done. It's really cool.
Yeah, or I can imagine other industries where take a picture of an oil skimmer and you can have a web page up with details about what it does and what it's used for and whatever in a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing how fast it takes a photo of visual data and converts it to structured data that you can display on the web.
Yeah, and it does a really pretty good job of doing text. So for hosting locally, it's really impressive. Of course, your cloud models, like if you're using ChatGPT or Claude, they're several months ahead, but what you're getting in the open source for local hosting, you just wait a few months, the models get just as good as they were. So you're maybe 3 months behind the trend. So if you can do it in ChatGPT today or Claude, give it 3 months, you'll have it in the open source, I'm pretty sure, So it's it's a fast-paced, exciting time to be working with AI.
So
Yeah,
could
I
we,
really enjoyed Xandon's presentation because I had never heard of Velveeta cheese before. There's so many things you can do with it. It's amazing.
It was
I'm gonna-
it was manchego cheese. Gosh.
slices in the individual wrapper?
Yeah. How to pair it. Yeah. Yes, what wines go well with
That's-
Velveeta?
That's Kraft American cheese.
I think it's
I love it.
a product. But I don't think there's any actual cow in it.
You can use it for lamination.
An industrial lubricant.
Yeah.
Like it's museum putty.
Yeah. Now we're gonna get sued
Exactly.
if the podcast goes
Great.
live.
Right.
As long as you laugh, it's comedy, right? And if it's comedy,
That's right. We covered this already.
it's all good then. So could we use that technique of dropping, a document or something into a container and processing it with the LLM to create dashboard modules? Like,
Oh yeah, you can. So if you're not having to worry about hosting locally, like I did this whole piece on a genealogy because I had a couple of genealogy books from my cousin had scanned in from the family's genealogy, and there's like 750 pages. I took them all. I used AI to write a little app that broke them out from the PDF that they were into individual pages and graphics, and then submitted those through an API call to have, at this time, it was Claude 3.7 to do the translation or transcription. And it did a great job. It did an awesome job. It cost me a little bit. It cost me like $20 in API calls, but 750 pages. And I'd already gone through trying to use Acrobat's OCR and other OCR software. And they put weird characters in there, screw it all up, formatting gets lost. Claude did an awesome job of putting that together. So then I compiled it all into a single document that I could throw into Google's Notebook LM, and created some podcasts from the documentation. So they're podcasters in Google's Notebook LM, which if you haven't used it is really, really cool. They sit and talk about whatever it is you feed them. So I gave them these books and they just were going on. You can interject and ask questions, and then they'll diverge onto different tangents. So if you're interested in particular storylines in the genealogy, now that it was in there, I could both share it with other family members so they could do the same thing. But then I could also ask questions about well, tell me about the wagons that so-and-so was using on that trail when it broke down. What exactly did that look like? And they would go into it, or tell me about that. What war was that they were in, and what area were they in? And because you're leveraging, large language model, it's the detail is incredible. Again, it gives you so much scope, so flexible. So anyway, it's really fun stuff. You can do that today, right? From FileMaker, push it into Claude. It's amazing, yeah. And yeah, for document scanning, I also did it because ultimately, sometime in your life, you're going to end up with documents for court, and you're going to be like, I don't know, how should I respond to this, or what's my best legal course? And hiring a lawyer to give you feedback on that is really tough. And the court documents, they're never in a digital format other than a PDF of the scans. So you need to transcribe it somehow. Again, having AI take care of the transcription, I had a really detailed document that I could then submit to AI to then ask questions and say, what does this mean exactly? What are the parameters? Break it down, analyze it. How can I respond to this legal matter, right? Without getting into my personal legal underpinnings, but super, super helpful. And if you're in a lawyer firm, doing it in a local LLM, for privacy is a big, big opportunity and big deal. So, yeah.
Well, sounds like there was a lot of LLM presentations there. Was that the largest buzz around the conference this year, or were the people excited about something else?
I think AI yeah, it's hard to get away from it these days. I think it was probably the biggest buzz. Claris just had a new CEO. I think I mentioned earlier, Ryan McCann take over. So there's certainly a little bit of buzz, people talking about that a little bit. You guys detect any other trends or buzzes that we saw there?
Proof guys tend to, they really went all in on the standardization and DevOps models, just giving people hints and advice and how-tos on what they do from their daily production model, and what tools they use. I really like that conversation of standardization,
Yeah.
and especially now in the age of like true DevOps deployment in FileMaker, mostly true. It's nice to see other development, especially a company like Proof Guys doing really good things in that space.
Yeah, I went to a session on DevOps and FileMaker, and it's not an area that the FileMaker world has really focused a lot of attention on historically, and it's not as easy to do in FileMaker or manage in FileMaker as some other platforms. So tools that are coming out from some of these vendors now, Otto from Proofgeist, Devon from, I don't remember who.
Yeah, Devon FM.
And I think 360 Deploy from 360 Works. Some these tools becoming available to automate the process and make it easier for us to use, best practiced development and deployment techniques. I think is a really positive direction that things are moving in the FileMaker world.
So what do you mean when you talk about DevOps? What does that include?
You'll have to watch the session. Well, can you
I don't know if
are they going to be public?
They probably won't be public. The video recordings will probably be for paid attendees, I suspect. But
yeah.
DevOps is a sort of a way of describing a full circle view of writing and deploying FileMaker systems. So not just here's some code, throw it on a server and start using it, or even what a lot of FileMaker developers do, including ourselves, where we end up working on and making changes in a production environment, so that your client is subject to all of the bugs that you might introduce into the system as you're doing development. And as we all know, bugs are a normal and natural part of development. It's not really possible to avoid them unless you have a proper DevOps cycle where you're writing the code in a dev version, moving a copy to a test server, a staging server for proper testing, and then deploying it to a production server, managing the release cycle, monitoring the servers, monitoring the backup. So just treating the whole FileMaker development and deployment process as a complete cycle, and not just get it onto the server. And so that should lead to more stable code, more successful deployments, happier customers, and tools. Some of these tools that are coming out make it possible to do it a lot more efficiently. So we can manage a dev environment and a production environment and move code between the two a lot more efficiently than we used to be able to do.
Mike?
Yes. My question that I have is concerning the kind of the vibe of Engage itself. This is the second Engage that was on the Apple campus. Before, when they were called DevCons, they'd be held in a hotel, and a lot of the fun part of going to a conference like this is being able to network and what happens in between the sessions. And there was some criticism last year that networking, things are not quite localized. I'm wondering what sort of improvements, what they learned from last year to this year, and how that made a better conference. I don't know if the guys can address that, or what they felt.
Yeah.
For me, I think that they did some really nice things. They gave more time between sessions, so you had more time to be able to connect with other people and other people that attended. It was in the familiar place. It felt way more relaxed this year than it was last year. So I like the facility. The Apple facility was really nice. All of the AV equipment is really awesome for presenting. It was super helpful for them recording and everything. So a lot better than I'd experienced at other DevCons, FileMaker events. So I really like that aspect of it. It was way more relaxed. It felt for me, even though I was having anxiety about presenting. But the cool part was having that extra time between sessions to really take and engage with other people and have that networking opportunity, and not feeling rushed like, oh crap, we got to get on to the next session. And then you get into the next session and you're just being fed a lot of information, but you don't have a moment to sort of compile it and reflect on it. And so I think that was for me, that was a really positive takeaway this year.
Yeah, I would agree completely about what seems like an intentional bit of extra time in between sessions to allow people to chat. One thing I think about the space at Apple is that it's there's a lot of different sized rooms. There's the rooms that some of the sessions are in. And then there's rooms that are as small as one person that can go into it and work for a few minutes, or a small room with three chairs around a table. So there's a lot of little places that you can pull yourself away into to work on a presentation or chat with some people about something. So that's kind of nice. I think they also worked harder to get everybody into a separate space for the meals. We had 3 different events in the large Apple kind of
Cafe Mac.
Apple cafeteria kind of place. They call it Cafe Max. And so we had 3 events in there. So that gave a pretty big opportunity for chatting with people and running into different people. And so I get what you're saying, or what somebody might say. There's not that opportunity to just meet in the hotel bar kind of at random and sit there having a beer. That opportunity doesn't exist. But there's a lot of opportunity to run into people and meet and talk a bit. And then there was a lot of people we aren't staying at the conference hotel. There's a complex a few miles away called the Domain, which is really just a shopping mall. But I think the conference hotels are down there. And so if you're staying in the conference hotel, there's at least a little bit of opportunity to meet people down that way, although we weren't down.
Well, Joe went down last night.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, catch up with some
And
people.
last year I had. This year I was just like,
yeah,
I had to decompress.
Yeah.
But Joe, man, the Domain last year was a lot of fun. It's getting to chat. with
It's like a
everybody.
neat, it's a neat area. I mean, yeah.
So a follow-up question on that. Sessions were only 2 days. Do you feel that was enough time? Should there have been a 3rd day? I'm not talking about the training day.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel like because I was going to a couple of non-public sessions, I was going to a couple of smaller meetings with some people and helping Xandon prep for his presentation. I probably only went to half the sessions. And they didn't start doing the sessions until 1:30 on Tuesday. So there was really only a day and a half of sessions. And so I think it's a good question. Is that enough? I don't feel like I got to enough stuff, but I'm planning on watching some of the videos. I'm looking forward to the Full Access conference in the fall, where there's going to be a little bit more technical content. Do you want to say a tiny bit about that, Mike, as long as that's coming up?
Yeah, so myself and John Howell of Data Experience have formally announced that we are putting on a unconference in the Silicon Valley area at a retreat. And our intention there is to not just have lots of sessions, but to provide an intimate atmosphere where people can really do a lot of networking and get together. And but we're going to put a little bit more structure in it, and we are going to try to pack 3 sessions at a time, variable lengths over basically 4 days. So, good 40 sessions with a wide, there will be AI sessions, but there's other topics to discuss, as well as not only technical, but work life stuff that is kind of only really appropriate in that particular atmosphere. I'm looking forward to that. It's challenging putting something like this together, but we've got a lot of momentum going, and our registration will start on March 31st. Another question about Engage. What was the attendance numbers? Do you know? Any idea?
They didn't announce anything that I heard. Did you guys hear anything?
Just from word of mouth, but attendance was lower than expected.
From the keynote, there was a lot of people at the keynote. If that was a number, it seemed like a pretty decent room.
Room was full.
Oh, real quick, I just do want to point out, like, I'm all about AI, so I was like, there's lots of AI. They had a lot of really cool sessions that were not about AI. Like, there were some great plug-in ones, and also there were some really good sessions. I didn't get to attend.
Well,
I talked to the presenters about them, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have been able to get. So I'm gonna have to watch them on the video afterwards. But yeah,
right. Well, Claris does have its initiatives, so they make certain things a focus of their conference. Definitely, AI has been that this year. So, a lot of people will submit speaker requests, and they're not accepted because that's not the big focus that they want. And they'll try to put some other things in there, but you could really tell that AI was the draw for that. But there's a lot of other stuff out there as well. So
there's for sure, no question. I think for us as developers, getting a handle on how AI affects our productivity and our development habits is a pretty big topic. Makes sense to me that Claris would be putting a lot of attention on it.
If you're not using it, you're falling behind. Everyone else is going to be using it. So get on the.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that's the gospel.
Well, I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon on this. I'm not a curmudgeon about many things, but I think there's appropriate use for AI. And my only teaser on that is that I've given sessions on development where, the old phrase, the perfect gets in the way of the good. And I think in some cases with AI, the good gets in the way of the perfect. And that's just something for you to chew on. I don't want to make this a big debate or anything like that. I mean, I've used AI, but I think there's time and place. So we'll just let it go at that at this point.
Yeah, we don't want to get into a religious debate at the moment.
No, I do want to, like, I'm a little bit of an evangelist, and I think I imagine, like, one day, I'm not too far into the future, and I think this is a very realistic expectation, and I'm not going to give anything away, but I think we're at a time when you can soon to expect that we'll get a time, because you get in other IDs. So just to preface it with that, you'll be able to ask AI to generate scripts and review scripts and code comment scripts and create calculations and all these things you can do currently, but you have to
done that
and paste into FileMaker. I expect that we're probably going to see something if AI hasn't surpassed that as a necessity in another year or so. I would expect that FileMaker, because they're following, it's to be relevant, they're going to follow what everybody else is doing because everybody expects it. And I believe that we're going to see that fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
And I don't disagree with that, and I've used those tools in that manner. But sometimes AI could be used as a principle for fuzzy logic.
Yeah, Joe and I were just talking about this. Like, we've got some calculations in one of our solutions, right? And the calculations are really complicated for custom functions, and there's no code comments or anything. And we're like, why don't we put that into AI, let it go through it, tell us what's going on, put comments back into that, so we can then put the custom function back into FileMaker and understand it better, or recognize bugs that might be there. And the coding that we're getting out of the frontier models right now is really good, and it can pick up all sorts of minuscule things that you're just not going to pick up when you're looking at, through 200 lines of a custom function.
Right.
So,
my only observation is that you just need to keep a very nuanced eye on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, don't take what AI gives you as blind faith. So
Yeah, there are hallucinations.
Yeah. Well,
there are hallucinations, as they say. Yeah.
even developers have hallucinations.
Yeah, we all write bugs.
I know.
Oh, Joe does.
Definitely.
Yeah. We're gonna start passing all the code to Joe. That was one of the actually cool things that they made really shared how important it was to give 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of every session so that everybody gets an opportunity to ask the questions. And then they were really focused on making sure that they had AV staff on hand to be able to get that audio into the recordings for
Right.
when you watch them later, see for the Q&A, because that's where you get some really great insight and knowledge, and questions are answered in a different technical sense than you get during the presentation. 15, it was great. Like I know that in the past at DevCons and stuff, Q&A section was like sometimes just never happened. And so it was really cool that they actually really made sure that as a presenter, we gave time for that. And I filled up my 15 minutes with some really good questions.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Guys, so last year, they spent a lot of time talking about Studio. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, and except a little different. There were a number of sessions, both by Claris and by some non-Claris people. Claris recently made the announcement that that the platform has changed a little bit, and that Claris Studio and Claris Connect are built in, so to speak. That our annual, that your annual license includes a level of access to Studio and Connect at no extra charge. So they had a number of sessions that were looking at end-to-end integrations, Claris Studio, Claris Connect, Claris FileMaker, and ways that you are working with the whole platform. So Studio definitely had a presence. Studio still has some obvious limitations, but I was impressed by. I was in one session where somebody was showing. I think it was yours. Artists from ClickWorks, they're a Belgian company. He was showing actually that was during the keynote, I think. He was showing a rather complex Claris Studio implementation that they had done, or that they had helped the county, I'm not sure I'm using the right term, but county of Antwerp, Belgium, to implement I think it was an app for helping to place orphaned animals. And that was a Claris Studio, but also tightly integrated with the FileMaker backend. And so there was a number of sessions showing those kinds of projects, showing how you integrate FileMaker and Claris, because Claris Studio, they both have separate databases. Claris Studio has its database, FileMaker has its database, and so those integrations require some awareness of how you are moving data back and forth. And so there were a number of sessions on that.
Well, back to the keynote, they talked about Studio in the keynote? Did anything else jump out at you guys at the keynote? Anything that you can share that's not under your NDA?
I don't even know if we're under NDA. I'm kind of embarrassed about that. Certainly, they showed a number of new features in the next version of FileMaker, some of which were AI related. And then, I appreciated an approach they took to the keynote that I haven't seen in the past, which is they brought a number of people on for brief periods. So they brought yours from ClickWorks in Belgium on for his little showing of Claris Studio only lasted a few minutes. And they brought, do you guys remember who else they brought on? Chris Nicolai.
Goodness.
Some internal people within Claris. So it was
Ronnie Rios had
Ronnie Rios
really
had
nice
a short
presentation.
He had a short section on. I'm sure he was showing something AI related.
Oh yeah, he did full circle, and this is stuff that he's been demoing a different like Beyond session. Even I think we had him doing stuff, but he's really polished it up, and it's really it's pretty cool.
That was I liked that the keynote felt kind of fast paced with different people coming through and talking about different things. I'm trying to think if anything else that stood out.
More Apple-esque, more like an Apple.
Yeah, maybe that's true. Yeah,
oh, good point.
And certainly, I appreciate seeing. Claris has been doubling down on the Apple connection for a while, but it's nice to see Claris, an Apple company, all over the place. I think being closer to Apple and their marketing and everything probably helps us all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then on the AI front, I think Apple's very tight-lipped. Nobody has talked about their new AI. Like you don't have access to it. It's not really there yet. So it's hard to tell how they're going to enter that AI game. Everybody else is kind of moving forward with it. So the expectation and hope is that Apple's going to come out with something really cool AI wise, but until we see it, it's hard to be able to figure out how well that's going to.
That's a mystery.
That's a mystery. And like, this isn't anybody like Apple, nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know until they're ready to drop it. It's not like a week before you might get developer access, but they're really strict about controlling what they're doing and getting it out before it's time. So,
well, they've got a long history of maybe not being first, but when they get there, being best. So, well, we've been going an hour. We should probably start to look to wrap it up. Any final questions you guys have for our Engage attendees? Anybody?
Yes. Did they announce where they're going to hold next year's conference?
Not that I heard. Did you?
No, but I almost forgot. 40 years. FileMaker's been around for 40 years, and I don't know if that date is, if that's for the next one or if that's for this year. 40 years. That's crazy.
They celebrated 40 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit of a buzz in the keynote that I forgot about.
Right.
That's a long time in the tech world.
It is.
A statistic that I used to poo-poo a little bit, but that I've come around to thinking is kind of impressive. Every year they talk about how many profitable quarters FileMaker's had as a company, and they're at 104 now. 104 consecutive profitable quarters as a technology company, especially when you consider some of the companies out there that are venture capital funded that have never had a profitable quarter. So I think that does speak to some staying power for them in the marketplace. So that's always interesting to see that.
You bet you can't buy stock just in Claris rather than having to just buy Apple stock.
I'd like buy Apple stock, and that way you get 1/100% of FileMaker stock.
Right. So there's that. Okay, well, this has been great. I'm glad you guys had a good experience at Engage. I look forward to watching Xandon's presentation. If I can, as a non-attendee, if I can get access to it.
We're gonna re-record that and stick it on our YouTube channel. So,
excellent.
I'm sure you'll have access to that.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys, enjoy Austin and what little time you have left down there, and the rest of you all get back to work. Do something good.
Thank you for spending your time with us at the FileMaker DevCast today. We hope you found something useful, something thought-provoking, and something to take into your own development approach. Things that help you to be more productive and to allow you and your team to get more done in less time. Find us online at portagebay.com and filemakerdevcast.com, and also on social media at FM DevCast and Portage Bay. Let us know if we can help you or your company with modernizing your approaches and streamlining your workflow. We look forward to seeing you at the next DevCast.